Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first episode of Alberta Legislature 101. My name is Will Vasseur. I'm the Alberta Legislative reporter for the Western Standard, and I'm excited to bring this show to you. It's called Alberta Legislature 101 because we are going to give you everything you need to know about what's happening weekly at the Alberta Legislature. We're going to try and give you everything at a base level so that you understand everything that's happening, and then you can go learn more if you so choose. Today we got a great episode. I'm going to share with you my top 3 stories from what's happening this week at the legislature, and then as well we got a great interview with Minister Demetrios Nicolaides. He shares with us a little bit about his hike he went on, hiking Mount Kilimanjaro in honor of his sister, as well as the goal to raise funds for victims of domestic violence. But first, we'll get into it by sharing our top 3 stories of the week. And this is going to be a weekly segment where I take the 3 biggest stories that I feel like Albertans should learn the most about so that they can be educated. And so here's this week's 3 stories. The first one is the battle going on right now over Alberta independence. And this is an internal battle going on throughout the province, but it's also going on in the legislature as the UCP try and walk the line of being in favor of Alberta staying within a united Canada. At least that's the message they're trying to portray to Albertans. But they're also leaving the door open for Alberta to have a referendum on Alberta independence. They believe that Albertans have the right to be able to vote on whether or not Alberta should remain within Canada. And to do that, Alberta, or the UCP, have kind of adopted a mantra of they're in favor of a sovereign Alberta within a united Canada. And they've had to adopt this because they're really dealing with an internal party struggle of around half of the UCP base wants to support Alberta independence, and they're in favor of Alberta becoming their own country. And the other half are in favor of Alberta remaining in Canada. And so the UCP are really having to play to both sides. And on the other side of it are the NDP, where a lot of the supporters there are in favor of Alberta remaining in Canada. They don't want independence for Alberta. And so they're balancing this act, and they're both really trying to play their cards the right way. The NDP are challenging the UCP to really pick a side, declare one way or the other, what way are they going to go. And to do that, they've formed a pledge, challenged all the UCPs to sign it, declaring that they are in favor of staying within Canada. And then on the other side, the UCPs are sitting there saying, no, we're not going to sign the pledge. This is just a big political stunt by the NDP. They're trying to really draw attention away from their leader, Naheed Nenshi, who he's got some issues going on over his history with struggles that have happened during his time as Alberta or as Calgary's mayor. You can go look on the Western Standard site. There's a little bit more about that there. But that's kind of the battle. The NDP are trying to challenge the UCPs to pick a side and really, do they want to support which half of their supporters? And the UCPs are saying this is big. This is just a big political stunt by the NDP to distract attention away from their own struggles. And so this is kind of the battle we're going to be dealing with as Alberta pushes towards the potential for an independence referendum coming up here in the fall if they can get enough signatures on the petition. We'll wait to see how that unfolds. The next thing to talk about here in Alberta is the struggle going on with Alberta's emergency rooms and the crisis that's kind of going on. Backstory on it is that Alberta's hospitals, the emergency rooms, are dealing with a struggle trying to keep up with the flow of patients going to the hospital right now. Most of the hospitals, especially in Calgary and Edmonton, are operating at overcapacity right now. And so there's really a lot of reasons going on about what is really causing this. But the issue is the number of, there's some people that have died because of this overflow of patients in the emergency rooms, in the hospitals, and the inability to keep up with it. Now, the blame for it, or the reason for this overflow that's kind of taking place, the UCP's largely blamed it on a higher than expected flu season that's happened over recent months. They've said it's kind of calming down now, but because of a large number of people that went to the hospital during flu season, Alberta wasn't really able to keep up with it. And they also have talked about a large number of individuals who are in the hospital, no longer needing hospital care necessarily, but still needing care, but they're stuck in the hospitals right now because there's not the care available for them in the communities. There's no community care facilities space open for them. And so the UCP have made a commitment to try and build more hospitals, build more beds, and also trying to build these community care facilities, but there's only so much they can do in the short term. And on the other side of it, the NDP and doctors have argued that there's been a lack of infrastructure and resources invested in Alberta's healthcare system that's really coming to a head right now and causing this overload. As Alberta's population has grew, funding and developments regarding Alberta's healthcare has really dropped, and that's what's causing a big part of the issue, as well as a shortage on doctors in Alberta that's causing this issue. And so this week, what the NDP did is they put out a call listing 3 demands for the UCPs to kind of meet. The first is for the Premier to step forward publicly and inform Albertans and update them on what exactly is going on right now. Throughout the kind of previous months that have been happening, there's been limited updates from Premier Smith or any of the 4 ministers that oversee health. And NDP are arguing that Albertans deserve answers. Albertans deserve to know what's taking place. So they've put out a demand that Premier Smith step forward and have this public call. The next thing is they're they're asking the Premier to declare a state of emergency regarding the healthcare crisis and Alberta's emergency rooms. Doctors have argued that doing this would give them the resources needed to kind of mitigate some of the effects of this crisis. And conversely, on the other side, the UCPs have argued that it's not necessary. We're not at the point where we need to declare a state of emergency. That's not going to help solve the issue. The other thing that the NDPs are demanding is they are calling for Alberta to institute a central command over Alberta healthcare, especially during this crisis right now. Previously, in 2025, Alberta kind of dissolved what was one ministry overseeing Alberta Health and divided it up in between 4 ministries. And what this has done, according to some of the doctors, is it's created some confusion about who exactly is overseeing specific regions of health. It's created mismessaging over who's doing what. And so the NDP are arguing that the UCP need to walk back the decision and really get one decision maker, one point of contact, so everyone can really organize themselves in handling this. And the third thing they're demanding is that they reconvene the Alberta Legislature so that a public debate can take place, so that the issue can be addressed publicly in front of Albertans. Right now, we're a few weeks away from the fall session of the legislature really beginning here. So we're kind of in this waiting period, but the NDP are calling on the UCP to start this early. Call the legislature together and let's debate it publicly. Right now, there's been no response from the UCP government since this most recent call this week. So we'll see what comes of it. But that's something that you're going to have to keep an eye on in the coming weeks to see how this all unfolds. And as Alberta tries to really mitigate the effects of this healthcare crisis that is struggling and really threatening the lives of many Albertans. The third and final story happening in Alberta right now is the continued evolution of Alberta's recall war. Now, I'll give you a brief synopsis of what recall is. Basically, in Alberta, individuals have the ability to recall their direct elected official if the official is not fulfilling their duties. Now, not fulfilling their duties is a very loose term. There's not a lot of directions for what that means, and so it's very loose. But what they do is they file for a recall, they then get a petition, and they need to get 60% or signatures equal to 60% of the number of votes cast in that area during the most previous election. And if they can do that, they then trigger a by-election for the elected official. And that's a really simplified version. Go read more on the Alberta Elections Alberta website. It explains it a whole lot better. But right now in Alberta, we're under a situation over the last 3 months where there have been 26 recall petitions filed. 24 of them have been against UCP MLAs. And so there's been a lot of suspicious activity going on with it. People wondering, like, why is there so many against UCP MLAs? 24 of the 26 are against UCP people, and just 2 are against NDP leaders. Now, there's a lot kind of happening behind the scenes of it. I encourage you, this week, I released an article on a group named AB Resistance. It outlines how they plan to weaponize the Recall Act to target 6 UCP MLAs and really dethrone the UCP government. I encourage you to go read that article because it really helps tie in why there's so much going on right now with the recalls and a little bit of those suspicions and kind of theories about why only the UCPs. Is this a targeted attack? Go read it. It's on the Western Standard website. I take the time and do it. I would really appreciate it. But this week, the second recall petition got submitted and it failed. It was unsuccessful in getting the number of signatures required to trigger the by-election. And now this becomes the second recall petition to fail. The one submitted this week was the recall campaign against MLA Angela Pitt. She's in Airdrie MLA. And the first petition, this failed a few weeks ago, was the petition against Education Minister Demetrios Nicolaides, who we are going to talk to in a few minutes, but not connected to recall. Now, the recall Nicolaides petition failed, and it got just 41% of the required number of signatures, which also equaled just 24.3% of the votes cast in the most recent election. So really, 24.3% of the people that voted in the most recent election agreed at this point that they want to recall their MLA, Demetrios Nicolaides. Conversely, this week we had the Recall Angela Pitt campaign get submitted, and that one ended with just 14.6% of the signatures needed to trigger a by-election. So it was well short of receiving the number of signatures needed to trigger a by-election. And then it also received just 9% of the signatures or of the votes cast in the 2023 election. And so as we can kind of see here, not only are these petitions falling short, they're falling well short right now of triggering these elections, especially against UCP MLAs. But there's 22 remaining. We'll see how the rest play out, but it's not looking well right now for these recall petitions. Coming up next for recall petitions, looking ahead, we have the Recall Nolan Dick campaign. He's a UCP MLA for Grand Prairie. That's going to be submitted, the petition, on February 19th. So in a couple of weeks here, that'll get submitted. And then the next after that, there's a collection of 6 petitions that'll be submitted on February 2nd. So we'll get a big load of them coming in at that time. So you can look forward to that. But with that, those are our 3 stories from this week. Those are the kind of 3 talking points. I know I went a little more in depth and it's a little longer in this video. I'm going to try and keep it shorter in future ones, but I felt that it was really important to try and give you guys at least a basic backstory on these things, since it is our first episode. And if you are new to try and keep up on what's happening, you're not necessarily going to know the backstory enough to understand what's happening now. So I tried to get you that information. But with that, we're going to jump into our interview with Minister Nicolaides. So I'm going to throw it to myself. This interview was recorded yesterday. I hope you enjoy our interview with Minister Nicolaides. Hey everyone, and welcome to this interview. Today we have Minister Demetrios Nicolaides. Minister Nicolaides is overseeing the Ministry of Education and Childcare, which he has served in since 2023. He is also the MLA for Calgary Bow, and he got elected to that position in 2019. And he did something really interesting this last month. He hiked Mount Kilimanjaro, and I'm not going to spoil too much of it for you guys and a little bit about his journey, but he was able to do it to help victims of domestic violence. And so really excited for him to be able to share that story with you guys. And with that, I'll invite Mr. Nicolaides to join us and we'll get going with that. Minister Nicolaides, thank you for joining us here with this interview. Many Albertans are aware of the hike that you did, hiking Mount Kilimanjaro. But for those who maybe aren't aware, why don't you talk a little bit about what exactly you did and give us a brief recap?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. About 2 years ago, my sister became the victim of domestic violence. And, over the course of the past 2 years, I had thought about different ways that I could work to keep my sister's memory alive, honor her legacy, and also contribute some effort towards combating domestic violence. And the idea was born in collaboration with some friends and colleagues to coordinate our efforts and establish a target of summiting Mount Kilimanjaro, and of course using that journey as an opportunity to encourage individuals to donate to our efforts. We have partnered with Fear is Not Love, formerly the Calgary Women's Shelter, of course right here in Calgary. And we wanted to use the effort to raise awareness, raise funds that we could direct to the Calgary Women's Shelter and help them to support more victims of domestic violence. And we were successful in both our fundraising efforts and with our climb. And so was really happy that we were able to hopefully turn something that has been so tragic to our family to something that will help benefit other people in a meaningful way.
So we'll talk a little bit more about the actual hike in a minute, but we'll talk a little more about the nonprofit aspect of it. And you mentioned the money that you guys raised for Fears Not Love and how you guys were successful in that. Can you talk a little bit about what you guys were able to raise and then kind of what those proceeds were going to go to specifically?
Yeah, well, when I decided to kind of start this whole journey, I said that there's a lot that happens in the domestic violence space. I'm no expert. I don't know the nuances. And I felt that it would be best to reach out and partner with an organization who knew this space best and who knew how we could direct our fundraising efforts and activity. And so I met with a couple different organizations, landing on an agreement with Fear is Not Love here in Calgary. And I asked them what would be the most appropriate use of our fundraising efforts. And we talked a little bit about personal and home security. We talked about survivors of domestic violence looking to install doorbell cams, home security systems, and even in lots of circumstances, as per their experience, a lot of individuals will look for wearable personal security devices. So things like necklaces, bracelets, and things of that nature that are connected in with security monitoring companies. And just by clicking a button on a pendant or necklace or bracelet, it immediately notifies a security monitoring company who reaches out to see if everything's okay. And so that was the preliminary idea. We're probably going to continue to go in that direction. But as soon as I heard the idea, for me, it resonated. I know as my sister was going through her divorce, she was installing doorbell cameras and other things of that nature. So it resonated for me. At the end of the day, we were able to raise just over $300,000, and we will be creating a new program over the course of the next couple of months in partnership with Fear is Not Love. to help achieve some of the objectives and goals that I mentioned a moment ago. So I'm really excited to see how this new program is going to develop and how many people it can potentially help and support.
And you answered it a little bit there at the end, but for individuals who are just seeing this video and learning a little bit about the work that you guys were striving to do, how they can get involved if they want to donate some proceeds towards helping those victims.
Well, we called our journey to hike Mount Kilimanjaro Melanie's Ascent. And so the easiest way that someone can contribute or become a little bit more involved is just to visit melaniesascent.ca. And the information is there. Of course, most of the information now is extremely outdated because it was all about our efforts to hike Mount Kilimanjaro. I'm sure that will morph into something different as we finalize the development of this new program with Fear is Not Love. But that's the best way that someone can get more involved or contribute. And again, in partnering with Fear is Not Love, we wanted to do that so that there was a reputable charity behind our efforts. We didn't want to create a new charity, have to go through all of the paperwork and perhaps some of the legitimacy that might be surrounding it. And we felt that partnering with an established and well-known charity would help to boost our efforts, but also help to ensure everyone's getting their appropriate charitable tax receipts. And all of that is occurring without any kind of issue.
Perfect. And we'll shift gears here a little bit. We'll talk about the actual hike itself. And so I want to ask about getting into hiking. What made you mentioned wanting to do something to honor your sister, and what kind of got you to the point of hiking was going to be that decision, or was the best way to do it?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a story. So prior to my sister passing, I was working on a bucket list. And one of the things that I put on my bucket list was hike a mountain, summit a mountain. I had never done any kind of hiking or I'd never done anything like that. And I actually recall sharing that with my sister, and she just kind of laughed at me and said, like, why would you want to do something like that? Like, what's like, there's no reason, there's no point. In her mind, it didn't make sense, and she didn't really understand it. After she passed, a lot of that, of course, got put on the wayside. But a few weeks, maybe even a couple of months after she passed, a friend reached out to me and said to me that he was quite sure that I was, going through a very difficult time, which indeed I was, and he wanted to take me out on a hike to help me clear my mind a little bit. And so he came and picked me up, and we drove out to Kananaskis, and it was the first time I had ever done any kind of hiking. And it was about 5 a.m. and we're working our way through the darkness in Kananaskis and reached the summit of South Lawson Peak at sunrise. And that's where things kind of clicked for me. I said, you know what? Maybe I will continue with that bucket list idea. But as my sister had always mentioned that there needs to be a point, I said, well, maybe this will be the point. And maybe I'll do it in her honor, in her name, and use it as a way to fundraise. So since then, I continued hiking. We and began building a little bit of a team. We summited 11 different peaks along the way, including Mount Elbert in Colorado, which is the highest point in the Rockies. And of course, culminating a couple of weeks ago with Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania.
And that, I like that story. And the reason why, part of the reason I asked, were you a big hiker before this, is so I interviewed Mr. Lowen right before you guys went on the hike. And I asked him if he was a big hiker before it. And his words to me were that he wasn't a hiker in the natural sense, but he did a lot of hiking while hunting. And I chuckled to myself and thought, man, did you not pick the best starter hike for this one? So
yeah, it's very true. He does, of course. He spends a lot of time in the outdoors and had, previously in his former occupation as an outfitter. But yeah, he hadn't done a lot of hiking and mountain climbing. So it was a new experience for him, but he just sailed through it. He did incredibly well. Of course, the entire team was able to summit successfully. We had an amazing team. There were 10 other individuals that joined me, including some friends, some neighbors, acquaintances, a friend of my sister's as well. So it was an emotional journey, as it was a physical and challenging journey. But again, in the end, I was so happy that we were able to be so successful in our fundraising efforts. We had initially established a target of $100,000, and so we've obviously just blown through that to a level that I never would have expected. And I'm so grateful for all the people who have donated, shared our work, and of course those 10 other individuals, including Minister Lowen, who joined me on this epic adventure.
That's awesome. And one of the things that he mentioned was the hike, the goal, or it wouldn't have been necessarily unsuccessful if you didn't reach the top. The goal and what was going to be success was the raising awareness for victims of domestic violence, and that proceeds, that was the real goal in the success. And I really sense that sentiment from you as well. Something I want to ask is the training process of getting ready for this hike and the build-up process. What was that like, trying to balance it, especially in the closing months, having to balance, I'm getting ready to hike Mount Kilimanjaro, but also serving as the Minister of Education during we'll call the busy fall session for you with everything?
Yeah, it was, so of course, in the months preceding the hike, 7, 8, 9 months out, you don't feel a lot of urgency, of course, but we prepared by just doing a lot of hiking. Of course, we were of the opinion that the best way to prepare for a hike is to just do more hikes. So we did a lot, and we're so blessed, of course, to have the Rocky Mountains right in our backyard. And so, as I mentioned, we summited 9 different peaks along the way, and did a lot of hiking in preparation. But of course, a lot of other physical activity at the gym, running on the Stairmaster or swimming or things of that nature. However, you're absolutely right. Coming into the final months, I think became much more stressful because the clock is really ticking, and your time is running out. And being in the legislature as we were in November and in December, certainly a heavy workload. I just did everything I could to find time to make sure that I was engaging in some kind of physical activity. Usually that meant getting to the gym in the basement of the legislature at 5 a.m. Or a couple of times, Minister Lowen and I would find each other in the legislature in between, votes or in between meetings, and we would just go up and down the 5 flights of stairs there in the building a few times. So just finding any kind of opportunity that we could, but carving out some early mornings was definitely my preferred option.
That's funny. That's awesome to hear, because it's something you wouldn't necessarily think about for a lot of people as they're preparing to hike a mountain. I know we're running short on time, so I'll ask you this one quickly. What was the most challenging moment on that hike? And then also, what was the most successful moment or the most gratifying moment on that hike?
I think the answer to both of those is the same thing. I think the most challenging part was summit night. So we had woken up at around 10:30 p.m. And had a short breakfast and prepared to begin our summit attempt at around 11:30. And it was scheduled to take approximately 6 to 7 hours. So through all of the early morning hours in the middle of the dark, hiking up, getting, every step is getting more difficult because you start at 4,600 meters, and then, pretty soon you're at 5,000, then you're at 5,200 meters. And of course, just continuing to increase. So the further you got, the more difficult it became in terms of oxygen level and trying to catch your breath. But that was also the most inspiring moment, reaching the summit, standing on the crater of this this dormant volcano, the highest point in Africa, 19,341 feet, and seeing the sunrise was definitely inspiring, therapeutic, and I think helped to bring all of our efforts to a close, both on the awareness and the fundraising side as well.
And then the last one here, kind of just bring everything full circle. When you're at the top of Mount Kilimanjaro, everything that kind of built up to it, all the meaning behind the hike and what you were trying to accomplish. What were some of those thoughts going through your head, especially thinking about the motivation behind it, wanting to honor your sister through the hike?
Well, it was, it was very emotional. Once we saw the sign that, that's established at Uhuru Peak, which is the exact peak of the mountain. It was just incredibly emotional. There were just getting emotional thinking about it again. There were lots of tears. There were, lots of hugs. And so it was a very, very emotional, emotional but rewarding time as well.
Perfect. Thank you, Minister. And we'll give you one more chance here. Just a quick plug for your guys' efforts and how individuals can get involved again if they want to.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, the details of our hike and links to donate and all of plans for the proceeds for the dollars that we raise can all be found at melaniesascent.ca. And as we now transition to putting these funds into and developing a new program, we'll continue to provide updates through that website about what this new program looks like, how individuals will be able to access it, and how it'll hopefully help people who need it the most. But through the website, melaniesascent.ca is the best way for anyone to learn more and stay connected.
Amazing. Thank you, Minister, for taking the time to join us today, share a little bit about that journey that you went on and your guys' efforts. I appreciate your time.
No worries. Thanks so much. My pleasure.
Perfect. And that was Minister Demetrios Nicolaides taking the time today to meet with us to discuss a little bit about his journey hiking Mount Kilimanjaro and trying to honor his sister through that journey and raise funds to help victims of domestic violence. And again, you can help those victims, like he said, and donate proceeds through melaniesascent.ca, and Fears Not Love is the nonprofit that they work through to help those victims. And we appreciate Minister Nicolaides' time to share that emotional story with us today. All right, that's going to about do it for today's episode of Alberta Legislature 101. Thank you to Minister Nicolaides for taking the time to do an interview with us today and talk a little bit about his journey he went through hiking Mount Kilimanjaro in honor of his sister and the funds he was able to raise for victims of domestic violence. As for this video and our YouTube channel, if you're not already subscribed, please do so right now to our YouTube channel. We've got a lot of great videos that already come out weekly, and we're going to have more coming out as often as we can here as our reporters start putting out their weekly videos. So give that a subscription as well. Go to our website. We got a lot of great articles out there written by our great staff here at the Western Standard, trying to keep you informed on what's happening in the world. This video here, if you enjoyed it, please like, comment, share, help everyone learn about Alberta Legislature 101, because it's all about helping to educate Albertans. If there's something you would like to see done a little different in the next episode, or something you liked, please comment on this video. Help us learn, because it's all about making everything better for you guys. And with that, I want to wish you guys have a great week, and we will see you next week on Alberta Legislature 101.